Thanks, Phil. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Happy Pride Month, happy June, happy almost summer solstice, just 20 more days or a little less than that. For folks who I haven't met, it's really good to meet you. I see some familiar names in the Zoom squares, and it's really good to see your names. Um, there are some folks who are not muted. It would be great for me and my brain and not getting distracted if folks who aren't speaking could mute. Thank you so much. So as Phil said, I'm the movement building director with Unitarian Universalist Mass Action. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm also the coordinator for Mass Power Forward, the coalition that I get to collaborate with MCAN, and I've been a long time fan of MCAN, so it's a pleasure to be here. And what I want to do at this time is share a little bit about the coalition. There are many MCAN chapters that are part of Mass Power Forward, and you're all welcome through MCAN as your kind of parent organization. So we'll talk a little bit about the organization. I'll talk about the priorities of Mass Power Forward, so both how we got to them, what they are, and then where they're at, because as you probably know, we're 90% to the end of the legislative session. So it's kind of the hot, juicy time. And then I'll share some of the coalition opportunities to get involved to help us get to the finish line. And I'll definitely have time for questions. So that's my plan. Does that sound good to folks?
Yep.
So
that's good.
And yeah, folks could just try and stay muted. It'll help my brain stay on track. All right. So to begin this work at UU Mass Action, and I will say for myself personally, I feel called to always ground into the social conditions in which I am trying to do this work in Massachusetts. And that includes naming, holding, facing, and knowing that the land we're on is stolen and that there's deep, deep, deep racial inequality in our roots and continuing today. So I just invite you to take a moment to hold that space if you'd like to as an invitation. You're not required to, but to remember the ways that colonization, anti-Blackness, white supremacy were integral to the founding of Massachusetts and are part of the fabric that we exist in today, that uphold white wealth, and that the names of the people whose land we're on include the Massachusetts, Mohican, Nauset, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, Pokanoket, Wakamtuk, Wabanaki Confederacy, and Wampanoag peoples. And there are many, many other Indigenous people also in the Commonwealth from other parts of the world. And they are all still here, still thriving, still doing the work. In addition to that piece, it is incredibly important for my brain to always remember that Black and African people's unpaid forced labor really built the foundation of white wealth, both directly here as enslaved people. Our Arlington UU Church just voted to acknowledge that the Arlington Church was founded in part by people who owned slaves, enslaved people. And that is part, facing that reality is part of the way forward. And that Massachusetts also was our economy was deeply entrenched in the slave economy of the South through the triangle trade. So we hold these truths that they continue today. And in that holding, recommit to being in solidarity. I hold that as a white middle class person. So thank you. And just breathe for a moment. Whew, it's a lot to look at on a Monday. But so important to always hold in our hearts tenderly as we do the work. Thank you. And if anyone wants to put in the chat the native land that you're on, I welcome that. Okay, so let me talk about the coalition. So Mass Power Forward is a gigantic, messy, beautiful, gorgeous network of a fluctuating number between 100 and 200 members of grassroots groups. Here are some of our members. I could not fit all of their logos onto one slide, but there's a lot of groups that are part of us. And we try to exist in a very non-hierarchical, democratic way. And I'm very, very excited about all these folks. I'm like, where's the MCAN logo? Oh, there it is. My Zoom square, Phil's face was covering it up in the right-hand corner. Excellent. Yes, MCAN was one of the founding members. As you might have guessed from the land acknowledgement, the stolen land and labor acknowledgement, solidarity is a really important part of our coalition's work. Unfortunately, Massachusetts is still a deeply segregated space along colonial and racial lines. I grew up in one of the whitest towns on the South Shore, so I'm deeply aware of that segregation, and that shows up in our movements. And so as a coalition, we make a explicit commitment and effort to be in solidarity with frontline partners, with Black, Indigenous, people of color led organizations. So you can see some of our partners here on the slide that we work to be in solidarity and alignment with. I'll just share briefly about the history of the organization, of the coalition. I know some of you, I see Jane's face here looking at me. We're here from the very beginning and probably know the story, could tell the story themselves. But we're almost 10 years old. We're in 2015, we're gonna hit our 10-year mark as a coalition. If you wanna travel back in time, in 2015, here in Massachusetts, we were fighting a lot of different kinds of dirty energy. In Holyoke, there was a coal-fired power plant still belching. In Springfield, oh God, I'm blanking on the other towns that had the biomass plants in 2015.
Springfield was a big one.
Springfield was a big one, but there were two others. There was like a, oh my God, like burning trees is renewable, like fad that happened. And the one in Springfield has been the one that's like the most zombie, keeps coming back from the dead. But there were others that have also been defeated. There were gas peaker plants being proposed. In particular, at that time, there was one in Westfield, Massachusetts. Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant on the South Shore, close to where I grew up, was in the process of like figuring out, when was it gonna retire? Was it gonna retire? Was it gonna get extended? Even though it was literally listed as one of the most unsafe plants in the entire country. And then layered on top of that came proposals for giant new fracked gas pipelines. And so, as a movement, I remember just being like, oh my God, this is bananas. Here are all these communities trying to, put out these public health climate threats. And they were all being pitted against each other, right? Like clean coal is a good idea, or like biomass is renewable, or like gas is this great bridge fuel, or like nuclear is safe and like totally fine. Like there was all this cross movement division that these communities were having to face. And then Joel Wall, who was working at Clean Water Action at the time, said to me, hey, did you know the legislature is considering like a giant package of clean energy legislation? And I was like, no, I don't do any legislative work. I didn't at that time. I have no idea. That seems really important. Like one of the best ways to stop dirty energy would be to have more clean energy. And so Joel myself, and the organizer from 350 Mass said, why don't we work on forming a grassroots coalition with folks like EAT out in the Berkshires and all these communities that have all these dirty energy, so that we can go in together and advocate for the good stuff and block, any bad stuff, like a pipeline tax. So that was the initial kind of like seed and inspiration, was all this bad stuff and the opportunity to advocate together. And this pipeline, I think, was really the clincher that really like solidified Mass Power Forward. If folks remember the Northeast Energy Direct in particular, and then the Access Northeast, which was really dependent. So I have on the slide, looking around the movement, some of the more insidery groups were telling others like, oh, the politics are really bad. It kind of seems like the powers that be, the governor, the speaker, like, it's just kind of like a done deal, like there's no hope. And then some of the technical groups, like the folks who like really study like how many megawatts we need of this or that, and how does the interconnection queue work, they were like, there's actually this like, like technically speaking, we see this shortage of gas, and like maybe we actually do need more. And then the frontline and the grassroots groups were just like, no, absolutely not. That is unacceptable. It is 2015. We have got to stop digging the hole. No more gas. Absolutely not. And like, no. And that like very clear no, that is what comes from the people who have the most skin in the game. And long story short, we won because of that no, because of that grounded, embodied no. And that is the truth of frontline groups. They're not willing to compromise their public health, be sacrificed. And so that is why Mass Power Forward aligns ourselves with frontline groups, because of that experience, because of that truth. So I don't want to yammer on and on about this. I could talk for way too long, but hopefully I've conveyed the heart and soul of Mass Power Forward. All right, so fast forwarding to this legislative session, we've evolved as a coalition to become more and more democratic, to have more processes. And so really briefly, I just want to say the priorities I'm about to share came about through a pretty lengthy process that started the August, like immediately after the last session ended in 2023. So we did this whole debrief, evaluation, consensus on what kind of campaigns we would be looking for, an open call, a presentation, a ranking, a voting, a discussion, which by the way, we're going to do all over again this coming in August. And so what I'm about to share had a lot of minds working on it and thinking about it. Okay, so here are the 4 campaigns that are most relevant, still viable, that I want to highlight for you right now when we are less than 60 days from the end of the session. The first 2 in particular, I want to just name, the air quality one and the siting reform one are in explicit partnership with the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Legislative Table. So very much held in that space. In brief, the air quality bill is about identifying air pollution hotspots where the air pollution is extremely bad, identifying them, and then committing to goals to bringing that down, saying like, oh, where are people over polluted in the air? How do we reduce it? It also has pieces relating to banning new gas stoves in new construction, and it has pieces around mold. Mold is really, I think, the biggest public health threat. One of the biggest health threats that we face in Massachusetts as climate change increases, because as you may know, Massachusetts we're on deck to get wetter and wetter and wetter and hotter, wetter and hotter. That's what climate change is bringing to our state. And what that brings in our old buildings is a lot more mold. And so it's really important that we figure out how to really address mold contamination. Anyone with mold sensitivity, I have so much tenderness for you. It's a really not fun experience. So that's what that bill is about. The current status on this bill is that only the outdoor pieces have moved forward out of committee. Those indoor pieces around gas stoves and mold have been kind of like stripped away and have not moved forward. But the thinking is, that's half a loaf in terms of a compromise. And so there is still hope to move forward on the outdoor pieces. I'm going to purposely ignore the chat until we get to Q&A. But please feel free to put your questions in the chat in the meantime. The second bill is around siting. If you've been watching anything around the politics in our state house on Beacon Hill, how we permit, decide where to put new energy facilities is like the hot, sexy topic of the session. Both of the most powerful people in the legislature, Senator Barrett and Jeff Roy, have been talking about siting reform. And the governor also created a commission to study this. There's movement in other states that people are looking at. And the Massachusetts Environmental Justice Legislative Table has had this bill for, this is at least the second session, if not the third, to put forth a proposal of how do we not repeat the mistakes of the past? Because, the evidence is very clear that environmental justice communities, Black, Indigenous, people of color, poor communities have been targeted and overburdened with, the industrial facilities of our energy past.
Yeah, I wore that.
And so, I basically kind of think of like, this is like, we redlined our energy infrastructure before. We dumped it all in the same places.
Yep.
We don't want to do that again. Someone is not on mute, and I can't tell if they're talking to me or someone on their phone.
Yep.
I'm sure Phil and Fred are on it.
Yeah.
I did already. Yep.
Thank you.
I'm sorry about that. I
That's okay.
just muted him.
No worries. And so I think of this bill as like the stop the harm bill. Let's stop dumping on EJ communities. And so one of the most important things about this bill is that it requires a cumulative impact analysis, and then it ties siting outcomes, decisions to that cumulative impact analysis. So cumulative impact analysis just means looking at what's the cumulative experience of pollution already in a neighborhood before we decide to permit a new piece that adds to that burden. That's all it does. Stop the harm. So the current status on this is on the House side. Chair Roy combined parts of our bill with his bill into what we often affectionately call the mashup bill. Not enough of environmental justice pieces was in there, so we're still hoping to change that. The Senate side has not put their cards on the table, so we do not, there's still time to influence that. And then the governor, her commission is also working on a bill. So there's three pieces, there's three chess pieces moving on this side. But it's really important that we weigh in on this, because it's policy in this is definitely going to happen. It's just a matter of how much justice will be in it. So that's the second bill. The third bill is around equitably decarbonizing all of our buildings across the entire state, right? I was talking about moldy, wet buildings earlier. We need them to be, made energy efficient, electrified, powered by local renewable energy, right? There's a lot to do with our buildings. This bill was all about establishing a fund, a renovation fund. At the moment, we think the bill itself is more or less kind of stagnated. However, through the housing bond bill, our allies have amended and inserted a piece that basically does the same thing. And this is going to come to debate anytime now. So that is still viable. And we're, again, hoping that that happens through the housing bond bill. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And then the last bill here, this bill establishing a moratorium on new gas system expansion. This bill is really grounded out of Springfield. I mentioned Springfield earlier, right? There where the zombie biomass proposal keeps coming back to try and we still want to burn trees for electricity. That's a community that is overburdened, right? It's ranked as one of the worst places to have asthma in the country many, many times. And right now, Eversource, the utility corporation, wants to build an expanded pipeline in that community. And that community has said no. This bill is inspired by that effort and would essentially put a halt on building out more gas infrastructure because, right, again, we do not want to keep building fossil fuel infrastructure when we need to actually be rolling it back. On the House side, that bill was sent to study. However, on the Senate side, it was reported out favorably, and we expect the Senate to really do something on the gas system. So we are really pushing for them to include this language because, again, we have to stop expanding the gas system. So those are the 4 campaigns. I don't expect you to remember all of that. I don't even expect you to necessarily advocate on all 4 all of the time. I encourage people to look at what are you passionate about, what calls to you. We all do our best work when we get behind the things we're passionate about. So if that was a little overwhelming, I'm sorry, and it's okay. So, Phil, how am I doing on time?
You're doing just fine.
Okay.
Take more time if you need it.
Okay. So some invitations on how to join in and take action. The first one is I will put in a link in the chat to join our rapid response team. The way our legislature works is pretty opaque, is pretty top down. It's not designed to be like, yes, constituents, like come join the democratic process. It's a lot of things happen quickly. And so there will be times like when the housing bond bill comes out to the floor for vote, or when the governor's citing bill actually comes out, where we're going to be like, holy moly, we need to get legislators to like co-sponsor this, vote yes, come out and support, and we'll only have like a day's notice. Or something will move and we'll have to react really quickly. And so this is really the team where you're just kind of signing up to be on the short list to say, I will do things that are inconvenient for my summer. Sign me up. I am willing to be like texted or like come, make a phone call and like, just a couple hours notice. That is what this team is for. And so I invite you to join the short list so that we can, respond really rapidly when these tight windows of political action are needed. The next thing I want to invite you to is our next lobby day. So knowing what we know about the legislature, we felt that it was pretty obvious we could schedule a lobby day and still have things to say. We're like, we don't think they're going to be done. So we are planning to do a decentralized lobby day on Thursday, June 20th. And what I mean by decentralized means that each legislative district, so if you're out in the Berkshires with Paul Mark, or if you're, in Concord, Lexington, Waltham with Senator Barrett, you get to decide where the meeting happens. You can meet with Paul Mark in Pittsfield Public Library with him in person. You can meet with him all on Zoom. You could drive to Boston and meet with the legislator on Beacon Hill. You get to decide as a district where the meeting happens. And on that day, June 20th, that is when there's only 30 days left in the session to really pass substantive climate law. And given the timeline, the kind of arc of where we are, when I went through the current statuses of like, we're still waiting for this, we're still waiting for that. I think that June 20th is going to be a very perfect strategic moment to meet with our legislators and say to them, hey, here's what I see, here's what I need you to do. So please consider signing up. And in addition, knowing who I'm talking to leaders of MCAN chapters. I'm also asking you personally to consider to be a lead for your district, to be a lead for your senator and or your representative. There's two main reasons why I want you to be the lead. And actually, let me say what the lead is, and then I'll tell you why. So the lead contacts the legislator's office. So if I were lead for my district, that'd be Liz Miranda and Rob Consalvo. So I would contact them and say, hi, we'd like to meet with you on June 20th. I would also convene a meeting with other constituents in my district to be like, hey, we're all in Liz Miranda's Senate district. Let's get together to prepare. And then I would either facilitate the meeting or I would set someone up who's coming to the meeting to facilitate the meeting. So the two main reasons why we want you to be the lead for your districts is because one, it's strategic. If I contact Paul Mark, he's like a really nice guy. He probably would reply, but he doesn't know me from, anyone. But if Jane contacts him, he knows Jane, right? So it's strategic in terms of getting the results, setting up the meeting. It's also strategic for our movement that he builds the relationship with Jane, not with me. That he actually has, a direct relationship with you. So that's why the first reason it's very strategic. The second reason is it's just more efficient. The more people that take on leadership, take on responsibility, the more happens. If I try to schedule all of these meetings and try and set up all of the preparation meetings, I'm going to be a bottleneck. Phil's going to be a bottleneck. Not as much is going to happen. We will have a bigger impact, more likely to win if you take on leadership. So for those two reasons, strategy and efficiency, I hope you all consider to be the lead for your district. And in just a moment, I'll go off my slides and show you what districts are still looking for a lead. But I'll finish sharing the opportunities. So that was June. In July, fingers crossed, it could all be over. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to leave things till the last minute. So in July, we are working with the Massachusetts Youth Climate Coalition to host a big rally in person on the Boston Common. We want to rally, we want to march, we want to be together, we want to be loud. And that will be Saturday, July 13th at 1 p.m. So please save the date. We want to be large and actually like get really great interconnection of our movement, but also make it clear through tweeting, through media coverage, that we want a climate bill, and we want a good one. And then lastly, if that still doesn't do it, and after July 13th, we still don't have a climate bill, we will do some last days push. So that could look like this. So 2 years ago at the end of the session, people in Greater Boston, we went into the State House a couple days a week in person and sang and chanted, and made it known that we were, you can see the sign, no climate bill is not an option. That sign was designed by Rosemary Wessel. Credit to Rose. So you can see we had different themes. One day we had umbrellas for the, the increased rain coming towards us. Another day we dressed all in red and had fans because the heat is going up. So we anticipate maybe calling for this type of last days push as well for folks who are not going to be, in Greater Boston, can travel into the State House to do singing and chanting with us. We are also looking into an option to do mail. So to gather maybe like a dozen postcards of, Springfield and mail every day a postcard to your senator or your representative, saying, the current message, so that they're getting a deluge of like snail mail. That's like, oh my God, they're still on me. They're still pushing. So that is the opportunities and the arc of where we see the work going. Phil, should I show the grid now?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, let me get out of my slideshow. All right, so here is the coalition tracking sheet. So right now I'm on the Senate tab. Look at that. I thought we had someone for Senator Barrett. Anywho, we would love to meet with as many senators as possible. So you can see, maybe you see your senator on here. Maybe there's a name for the district lead already. Maybe there isn't. But we would love to have, we're aiming to meet with at least a third of the legislature. And I would love to see more of these senators. Hey, Dan Franklin, I saw you on the call. You're here. You're signed up. So, feel free to put in the chat if you're just like, I'm in, sign me up for so-and-so. I still want you to RSVP, but like, feel free to make your commitment right now. I know there's got to be somebody for Brownsburger here, right? So that's our Senate side. And then on the House side, so there's 160 representatives. Would love to see more district leads for these House districts. So I'll just do a slow scroll. There's Rob Consalvo. That's my guy. I should just sign myself up right there.
So Karl, you'd like people to put their name, email address, and their senator or representative.
Yes. Yeah. If you're signing up to be a lead, you can go ahead and put that commitment in the chat right now. I will also, let me put when you RSVP for lobby day, did that work? No, I gotta go off my share screen to find the link to get the link again. For some reason, it's not shared. When you RSVP for lobby day, there will be a place to indicate you are signing up for district leads. So I'm like feeling, if you're feeling inspired right now and you want to commit right now, like commit right now, and you will need to RSVP. So you can see, this is part of the beautiful, gorgeous, like network that is Mass Power Forward. So, right, like, or you can commit to asking someone. So Alan is from the UU Arlington Church. And he's like, oh, I've already signed up for one district. I'm going to find someone for the Garbally district. You can also make that kind of commitment. It takes a village to get a lot of things done. And we need everyone take on what works for you, whether that's one district, whether that's two districts, 3, 4. Where does your chapter have members?
And just make sure you include the email address so that we'll be able to reach you.
Yes. Although if they registered for this webinar, we should be able to get their email, right, Phil? But it would be
Yes.
easier. It would be
Yes.
easier if you just put it in the chat. We can save the chat.
Yes.
There are occasional judgment calls like Pignatelli being not worth it. He's retiring, been a little hard to reach. That's how that decision was made, in case you saw that go by and you were curious. Okay. That was everyone. So
May I ask, this is Fred Davis. I see a few people have put into the chat that they'd be willing to be the district lead, and a lot more people haven't yet. And maybe people could put in the chat any questions or concerns they have about what's holding them back from jumping to this great opportunity that you're offering them. And by the way, when I say that, that's me handing back to you. Do you want to tell people how onerous or easy this will be?
oh, I think it's personally, I think it's lobbying has this like mystique around it as being like, oh my God, like I'm gonna talk to my senator, and like it's like this big deal. Actually, they're just humans like us. And it's literally just like emailing their office. We have a template email we can share with you. And when I said like preparing for the meeting, we'll have an action guide for you where the literal like script that you can like read off of if you're like, I don't know how to do this, I'm scared. We have every investment in coaching and supporting you. So please, consider if this feels out of your reach. I always think of like, there's like the comfort zone, there's the growth zone, and then there's the panic zone. Don't go to the panic zone. But if this feels like, this could be my growth zone, please consider saying yes.
Dan Franklin says, I found it very intimidating the first time, but after that, it got easy. Oh, easier. Okay.
Yeah, Dan, this has been relatively new for you, and you've really stepped into the growth zone. I really want to congratulate and thank you for that growth zone work you've done. It's a really important, and I'm grateful for it.
We've got 54 people on the call, and I think a few have yet to commit. So there's still a few minutes, folks.
I'm happy to answer other questions as folks are considering if there were other things that came up in the chat while I wasn't looking.
I've been looking at the chat. Can we go all the way back to Sally? Had a comment at the very beginning of the meeting about ZCRF. And Sally, are you here? Can you reiterate what you were saying about the zero carbon? Thank you.
I am here. I got an email just as this was starting from the Zero Carbon Renovation Fund saying that how much 150 something million is in, no amendments are needed.
Oh, well, that's a great update. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Hot off the presses, no amendment needed. We just need to pass the thing. Heck yes.
Boom beans. It pays to come to meetings, folks.
And Ricky Papo had a question about where Will Brownsberger, who's the number 3 in the hierarchy in the Senate, and where he stands on the climate bill.
I'm not sure where he's at on the specific pieces. I'd have to go back and look at the notes from the last lobby day meeting. but he's incredibly important, and I hope folks sign up. I see you're from Lexcan, Ricky, so perhaps you know people in his district who want to sign up.
Yes, I know people in his district.
Yeah.
I mean, he's generally pro-climate, but specifically, we need to know where he stands.
Great.
Can I ask a general question? And maybe it's behind other people's thoughts here. So the four priorities that you ran us through, do you anticipate there being an omnibus bill or bills, and or do you think there'll be other issues that will be involved?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, let me say, if I really knew the answer to these questions, I would be able to see the future. The latest gossip is that all of this may be in jeopardy, that nothing may happen without a big push, like 2 years ago. For folks who were here 2 years ago, we were literally at the same point, and we started doing things, to say that no climate bill is not an option. We may have to do that, may be also where we're at in requiring a big push. I do think that something around siting is very likely. If nothing else happens, that package around siting may happen. We may also see something around gas. So whether that includes the halt on gas or not is to be determined. But those are kind of the two pieces that feel the most likely, and just how good they are is, I think, dependent on how much we advocate. Thanks, Fred.
If anyone wants to raise their virtual hand to ask a question, they can do so now. And that would be, your virtual hand will be under reactions if you mouse down to the bottom edge of your screen. And I see Fran from Lexcan.
Yep, so I'd like some clarification on the role of this committee on siting, the governor's committee. You mentioned something about them putting forward a bill, but is that amendments or is that an actual bill?
It's an actual bill.
How can they do it?
I know. Fran, you're like, how does that work? And I'm like, yeah, I know. How does that work? It's the governor is able to file bills. It's a late file bill. I mean, let me just back up and say, as far as I can tell, there are almost no real rules in the Massachusetts legislature. They can finagle to do whatever they actually want to do. But yeah, the governor can file bills, and that is the indication that we've got. She's going to introduce a late file bill on. Although the fine details of that, I am actually looking for someone's guidance. So if anyone gets the answer, does she file it on the House side, on the Senate side? Is there some direction? I have yet to actually hear the real answer on that. Thanks,
So pressure on the governor would help?
Yeah. Yep. Actually working to get a petition letter campaign out with the EJ table, doing just that, to ask her to really come out strong on her siting bill.
Okay, thank you. Dan from Melrose.
Hi, yes, following on, I guess this is related to Fran's question. There's a lot of concern in the other groups I'm in about the proposed new plan for the state level siting commission to basically take over the whole permitting process, and in the process steamroller anything that local conservation commissions might want to stop. I'm particularly concerned about this because of the issue of clear cutting forests in order to install large solar installations. So I'm wondering which bill or where that stands in terms of the that provision.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Dan. So yeah, Jeffrey Roy, the most powerful person on the House side regarding this topic, wrote a bill with National Grid, right? A utility corporation. And that bill included some inspiration from New York. Unfortunately, that is all about like fast, fast, fast. It's like, let's consolidate, make all these permits into one place in Boston, and they'll just tell the municipalities what to do, which, is very antithetical to good, deep democracy, to conservation commissions who understand their very communities. And so that is a big concern of the siting conversation as well. We want to balance doing things quickly with doing them well. And not just clear cutting forests that are also good for the climate. So that is definitely part of the conversation in what we're advocating for. There's a really good letter from Joe Comerford, actually, that I can share with folks, where she really lays out this concern about the consolidated permitting piece, because we want to make sure that there's good process, not just for justice, but like just for basic democratic processes. Did that answer your question, Dan?
Well, I'm just wondering, is there a specific, what's the specific bill? What's the specific language we should use with our legislators to say that we're opposed to totally overriding local control?
Yeah, this will be in the action guide that we do on June 20th, to how to talk about this. So the bill is, I'm just looking back at my slide, it's the H4501. That's the mashup bill. That's the National Grid bill with our EJ bill. And I think the language would be roughly like, we support our municipal democratic processes, not a, take all the power to Boston consolidated permit, something along those lines. Like really emphasizing the ways that our municipalities need, so like, and if they're too slow right now, give them more support, right? I will make sure to share Joe Comerford's letter, because she really does a good job of like going into depth on this. I can give it to Phil, and maybe it can go in the follow-up email.
Yes, we're going to send out the recording and the slides and the notes shortly. Thank you. Nina, you have a question?
Yeah, I wondered with respect to the air quality, the number one, the air quality bill, is there anything in there that connects to the fact that there's a possibility of the huge expansion for private jets at Hanscom, and that's going to affect air quality massively? Because those private jets are so much worse than, the other jets, which are bad enough. So anyway, that was just my question.
Yeah, great question. Stop private jet expansion everywhere. Let's just name that. Hell yes, stopping that. And the short answer is no. That whole proposal to expand at Hanscom happened after this bill was filed. And so there's not a interlocking piece there that I'm aware of.
Too bad.
Yeah, I know, right? If only, we didn't have such a long, onerous legislative process, and we could actually get things done faster. I see Fran has put in the chat box the comment deadline for June 14th. I would encourage folks. That is a Mass Power Forward supported campaign to stop the expansion of more private jets. Let's just stop private jets altogether. So,
and Fred,
I wonder if you might want to comment on a big picture question for most of us who are not quite as connected as you might be with the goings on at State House. And that the question comes to my mind. So today's Boston Globe editorial was excoriating the culture at the State House, the last minute culture that is causing so much of the issues that you're describing. But the editorial is general. It's about across the board, about issues across the board being held hostage to the very last minute. It doesn't even mention climate in the short list of particulars. Anyway, so we know this is a cultural problem, but on the other hand, I hear allegations that on climate issues and energy issues that large money factions get attention. And so my big picture question to you is, how do you see it? Do you see that the activists, the advocates that are on this call are competing against the large money utility and/or gas and oil powers that be?
Yeah, thank you, Fred. Absolutely. We are up against intense opposition of, fossil fuel companies, utility corporations who make their money on expanding the gas system. And they do not want to see these bills pass. And you're absolutely right. And I haven't read that editorial, but I'm going to go read it. The culture of the State House is toxic. It's broken. It's really rough in there. We do have enough champions who are, I think, laying awake at night worrying about the climate that we get every session that I have been involved since 2015. We have had climate policy. It has happened. How good it's been each session varies, of course, but it gets through, unlike other priorities. UMass Action, we also work on housing justice, we work on immigrant justice, we work on decarceration. There's a whole lot of justice we need. I'm not a C4, I'm not a PAC, I'm a 501c3, but in general, the more involved in our democracy we get when we can step out of our apathy and get involved, the better it's going to run. And so again, going into that, getting out of our comfort zone of being like, oh, I vote regularly. I'm speaking for myself. And saying I'm going to actually develop a relationship with my state rep and my state senator. I'm going to actually look them in the eyes and say, I need you to do more than just the bare minimum. I'm going to pay attention to, there's a lot of folks running for election. This is a good time of year to be like, I'm watching you. All of that will help untangle, clean out. I don't know what this hand motion is I'm making, but it's something like get that crud of industry influence, toxic culture. Our engagement is the medicine. It is the antidote.
Thank you very much, Claire. We're coming up on the hour. I really appreciate your taking the time to speak to us today, and the recording will be sent out as well as this slide deck. I did put in the chat that if you want to sign up for upcoming MCAN monthly Zooms and presentations, just click on the link that I put in the chat, as well as we welcome donations as anytime. We very much appreciate your financial support. So with that, I'm going to end the formal meeting, but I'm going to stick around if people want to chat more informally. And also if there are MCAN chapter heads who'd like to share updates, we've got time to do that as well. Thank you again for everyone joining.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, everyone.
And we'll hope to see you all soon.